me see. Stream. Okay, okay. I think we are on. Hey everybody, what is up and welcome to today's live stream workshop. I'm so glad to see you all here. Let me know in the comments we're good. You can see me, you can hear me, everything works well. All right, so thank you all for showing up here. I'm really excited for today. First of all, this is a really exciting day for us at Flux Academy because today we have launched our third edition of the Webflow Masterclass, and we're running a whole promotion to talk about how cool this new course is. But we thought to start things off with this workshop to build Tesla.com and show you how easy you can do this with Webflow. I'm going to aim to do this, at least build the homepage in about 1 hour, and it's going to be pretty exciting. So first of all, I want to introduce, we have Kabarza on the stream with us. Hey Kabarza, what is up?
Hey everybody.
Kabarza is a
Super.
Webflow expert. He's also a coach here in Flux Academy, and he's also co-teaching the new Webflow Masterclass together with me. It's been super cool to work on this project with you. How was it for you? What do you think about this new edition?
It is super awesome. You start from zero and then you become a master. It was a lot of fun creating that. And today is a very exciting day. I'm super excited to be here. And guys, just feel free to ask anything. I'll be in the comments. I'll answer your questions and I will also interrupt Ron if I have to just pop in with a question.
Fantastic. So we want to make this stream and workshop as interactive as possible. So I'll be doing the teaching, and I will assume that, we'll start doing this as simple as possible. If you're a beginner, don't worry, we're not going to overwhelm you. But if you have questions, feel free to chime in, and Kabarza will try to help you out. With that said, and by the way, let's see what we're going to build. So this is Tesla.com's website. And the reason I picked this is because, number one, it's pretty simple, so that we'll be able to do this in 1 hour and teach you a bunch of stuff. No, we're not going to do redesign. I saw in the comments you were asking if we're going to do a redesign. I'm not going to do a redesign, but I want to show you what's cool about this and what we'll try to cover today. So first of all, they have this very nice kind of like smooth snap scrolling. So you can see as I'm scrolling, it's immediately passes down into the next section perfectly. And also we have this kind of like all the content here, the model and the buttons are kind of like fading in, fading out with different content on each section. So this is pretty simple, and I'll show you how to do this. And my goal again is to cover the basics together with you, but also show you how you can be creative about this so that you can achieve really cool stuff that's obviously good enough for companies like Tesla. The other thing that I like about this website is the kind of the menu that they have here. So they have this kind of like a thing, the hover state here is actually just like following your cursor wherever you're going. So it's kind of like squeaky going around, changing size. And I like this. And I thought, now they've used a bunch of code to achieve this and the other effects. And I was like, can we use no code? Can we be creative enough so that we can achieve the same effect pretty much and not use a single line of code? And that's my goal here. My goal is to show you how you can be creative around Webflow's interaction and animation so that you can create something like this, but perhaps this gives you an idea on how to do something different. So with that said, let's get started. Now I've downloaded the assets from this website, and obviously I should say the design and all the assets are copyrighted to Tesla. It's theirs. We're just going to rebuild this in Webflow. Now, if you want to download these images, I've packed them, in zip file below this video, and yeah, you can work alongside with me. So let's get started. So I have a Webflow project. It's just a clean new Webflow project, and I've just went ahead and uploaded the assets. We don't have a lot, but that's what I have so far. So let me get started. Now, the first thing that we're going to do whenever we're starting a Webflow project is we're setting up the basic, right? So we're going to have a font we're going to use throughout the whole website, and the font size and stuff like that. Those are the things that are going to apply to everything that we're going to put inside our body. So the first thing that we're always going to do is going to change body all tags. We're not going to add a new class because we want this settings to be applied to every page on the website. Now they're using, I think this is Gotham here, but I'm just going to use Montserrat because it's a free font. It's already included inside of Webflow here, and it looks pretty much the same. So I'm going to choose Montserrat as our font here. I'm going to keep it as normal. I'm going to put the size as, I think, 14 pixels, and let's say 24 line height. So that's going to be, and color, let me go and pick something like some kind of a dark gray. So that's kind of like going to be the text style. And that's the basic setup. Now, here's how I want to get started. Let's start, because most of this website or the homepages list is very, very simple. It's the same structure. We always have a section that takes up the whole screen, and then it has some background image to it. And on top of it, there is some kind of content, and the content is the same, right? It's always the model and these buttons. So let's start by creating this component, this section component, duplicate it a bunch of time. I'll leave the navigation and stuff at the top for later on. So let's start with the content and add the navigation later on. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start off by adding a section. So we have here section from the add panel, and let's just take it and give it a class. Let's call it section.
Now just a moment, Ron.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry for interrupting. Oh, now we see your screen.
Okay. Oh, you didn't see my screen up until now.
No. Yeah, no.
So this whole time I was talking about the Tesla website, and what's cool about it, I wasn't sharing my
No,
screen.
the others. No, it's cool now. I mentioned the designers. It wasn't shown.
Okay. But you saw when I was talking about this navigation and the snap scrolling and everything? You saw that?
Yes. Sorry, it was just lagging a lot from the other screen I have.
Oh, got it. All right. Okay, so let's get started. So what I have here in Webflow, you can see my screen right now, right? Yep. All right. So we have the body. Now we've added a section. Now, as I said, all sections here take up the whole space, right? So what we want to do is we want to define the height of this section, and we can do it from here. And we want it to take up the whole screen, so we're going to say 100 VH, which stands for viewport height. This basically means fill up the whole screen, no matter if it's high or low, it's always going to take up the whole screen. So that's the first setup that we want to do. Now, the second thing is that you can see that the content here is centered. So the content is always centered. So let's go ahead and center the content. And I'm going to do this by changing the display setting here into a flex. And then let's just, justify it to the center. So that's basically what we have here for the section. And all sections are going to look the same. The thing that's changing with each section is the background image. So I'm not going to apply the background image just yet. I'm going to add the background image later on as a modifier. Actually, let's do this right now. So let's call the first section, let's add a modifier and call it model 3. Let's add a modifier model 3 and apply the background. So I'm going to scroll here to the background and pick an image. So this is the first image. Now the image is way too big, so we want to make sure that it's covered. So it's covering everything. So it fits within the bounds of this area. So I'm going to change the size from custom to cover, which means it's going to fit it. I also want it to be centered. So in the positioning, I'm going to change it to center. Now this didn't change anything right now, but if we're going to have different crops for the images, it always means that it's going to be centered. So now we basically have a section. Next, what do we have next? Now we have, and by the way, I can see I've picked probably the wrong, that's not the, I can see I didn't pick the right image, but I guess it's, it's this one. All right, fantastic. Okay, so now let's bring in the content. So in every website, and this is a general thing that you want to always structure your website like this, we always have a section that takes up the whole width of the screen, and then we have a container in the middle because the content is not spanning all the width of the website, and you can see it's actually contained within these boundaries. Actually, the buttons here show you how wide the content in this area is. So let's go ahead and add the container that's going to hold everything that's in here. So I'm going to go ahead, add a div. I can add a div or Webflow's container. It's pretty much the same. Let's call this container. And this container specifically, I'm going to give it some kind of a max width. So I think let's try 550 pixels as a max width. And I'm going to just set it to expand because we're in a flex thing. And so this is where the content is going to be, but you can see it's like top to bottom. Now, actually, it's not top to bottom here. We're going to have space where we're going to have the, the nav bar, and also here we need some space. Now, note that we have this tiny arrow here, this scroll arrow, which we only have in the first section. So I'm not going to deal with this right now, but you can see that in all other sections, there's pretty much space here at the top and at the bottom. So let's go ahead and do that by adding some padding. Or actually, let's add some margins from the top and bottom. Now we can do this in percentage or fixed pixels. I'm just going to do this right now by hand. And maybe this is okay. Maybe later on after we add the navigation, we see that we need a little bit more space. But right now I gave a little bit of margins from top to bottom. And by the way, I hold the Option key if I want this to be symmetric, the spacing to be symmetric, which a lot of times in design you want spacings to be symmetric. So now that we have this section here, the content, the area for the content, basically we need we have two groups here, right? We have this text group at the top and we have the buttons group at the bottom. So that means let's wrap them in two different divs so that we can put them in here. So I'm going to put one div, and div is just a box. If you're familiar, new to web design and Webflow, div is a box that's holding content, right? So this first one, I'm going to give it a class. I'm going to call this text wrapper. And wrapper is how we call divs that hold stuff together, right? It's like a group in Figma or whatever. So here's one that we called text wrapper. The second one I'm going to call buttons wrapper. Now, as you can see, they're both aligned to the top. And I want one of them to be aligned to the top and the other one to be aligned to the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this container and I'm going to turn it again from display to flex settings. Now flex allow us to organize the boxes within the box, right? So right now they're stacking them horizontally, but I want them to be stacked vertically. And right now they're justified to the top, but I can justify them here, space between, where one is at the top and one is at the bottom. So this is now spacing them one at the top and one at the bottom. And again, because everything that we've done so far is dynamic, right? Then it doesn't really matter how, what screen size it is. This is always going to stick to the bottom area and the top one is always going to stick to the top area. So now that we have this, let's add some text, right? So this is probably model 3 is probably the heading here. So I can add a heading, maybe like H1. Usually H1 you wouldn't want to have more than one, like for SEO purposes, but let's just do this really quickly. And again, because I'm going to have this repeating again and again, I wouldn't want to give this a new class. I'm just going to design the H1 classes for all the website. And then let's go here, maybe set this as 40 and maybe not bold, maybe medium, and add the text here. Now, probably I would want to make the container or something like this apply centered text for everything between inside the container. So this is going to be centered. Everything actually is going to be centered. So I can change the alignment to centered. So we have this title, and let's bring another text element. And this is just a normal text element. Let's do order online. Let's do this. This automatically became a link, but I want to make sure that our links have an underline. So let me go here, change all links, and make sure that they have an underline. So now this is a link. If I want to connect it somewhere, I can connect it. Oh, it's automatically connected. Very nice. The copy paste works really nice. Okay, so we have this one. Let's create the buttons. So I'm going to start off with Webflow's default button, and let's drag it here. Let's call this is custom order, right? So custom order. And let's give this a class of button. Now the second button is actually, you can see that it's a variation of this button, right? So it looks just the same. It has the same size, the same text, the same alignment, same corner radius. The only difference is it's white. So that means we should probably have just a single class of a button, and then we have a modifier to create a variation on that button. So if we make general changes to the original button, they're going to be applied to this one as well. So I'm just going to duplicate this so that we can look at them at the same time. This is going to be existing inventory. Existing inventory. All right, so let's get started with this button. Okay, it's called button. Fantastic. What do we want to do? We want to change the color to this dark gray, maybe reduce opacity a little bit here. We want to give it a round corner, so let me give radius corner of 50 pixels. Now, you can see that those words are actually longer than these, but actually these buttons are the same size. So maybe I want to make the size fixed here in this case. So let me go here and do maybe 150 pixels. 150 pixels, maybe more. So maybe 230. That looks okay. Now I want these to be spaced out, right? And I can do this in multiple ways, but because we already have the button wrapper, and because we've already used Flexbox to, space between here, top, bottom, we can actually do the same here and do left, right, right? So let's turn the buttons wrapper into a flex. And then here, I do want them to be stacked horizontally and justify them space between. So now it actually looks pretty good. Maybe this needs to be a little bit bigger. So now we have the buttons. So now let's create a modified version here. Let's call this maybe light button and turn this into a light color. Sorry, not the typography, the background color into light with a little bit of opacity and dark color. Okay, so now we basically have the buttons. Now I didn't do this perfectly. I can see with the spacing and the sizing, I haven't done this perfectly, but it's pretty much okay. The section looks pretty much the same. Also the image size, I can see that they have made the image bigger, but let's roll with this for now. Okay, so now we have basically one section and we have the structure. So let's go ahead and duplicate this a few times. Copy, paste, 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 maybe like 4 or 5 sections. And now we have different sections. So basically the only thing we need to do is, change the text, right, to maybe model Y on the second one. And then we want to change the background image. So instead of model 3, I can duplicate that and call it model Y. And then go ahead. What is model Y? It's the blue car. I know nothing about cars besides the color, so. Okay. So now, basically, this looks okay. Okay. What's the next section? So now you can see how easy it is, right? We have the structure, bam. Now we can go ahead and within minutes have the whole page built. So this is Model S. What is Model S? It's the other red car. Let's go ahead and replace that with, this is the other red car, or this is the other red car, whatever. What do we have after this? We have Model X. Okay. And I don't want to bore you with, all of the copying and pasting. So I guess I'm not going to do everything. Just enough that we have something to scroll snap with and see that everything works. So what is Model X? It's the white car. It's the white car. And then let's do the solar panels, just so that we have one more. Okay, solar panels. Let's duplicate solar. Okay, fantastic. So we basically have most of the structure of the page working. So let's go ahead. What do we have? Okay, we have one more thing that I want to do before we do the snap scrolling. which is the button that we have here. So we have a button here, and you click it and it scrolls to this next section. So basically, I can do this very easily, right? I can go here into the first section, and I have this image arrow down. I can bring it down here. Whoa, it's pretty huge. Let's call it down arrow. Let's make it like 14 pixels or something. Okay, so you can see it's here, but we don't want this to be here. Now the thing is, we also don't want to put this inside of our container, because our container, has this space between. So it's messing up with everything that we have here. So what I really want to do is make this arrow not mess up the layout at all. Just like it doesn't take up space inside the section. Just be on top of it. And the way I'm going to do that is by turning it into a position absolute instead of being position static. That way it will not be actually rendered as an object that's taking space here. It's just going to be on top of it. Now, every time, and we're going to use position absolute a few times here, every time you want to go ahead and do that, change it to a position absolute, it needs to be relative to something. So you can see right now it's relative to the body. But we actually want this to be relative to the section. So we have to go into the section and change it into position relative. Okay? So now that we've made this, and I'm going to go back into the down arrow, now you can see that it's relative to the section. And now basically all I want to do is, give it a little bit. I want it to snap to the bottom. So let's say I want this to be 20 pixels from the bottom. And now it's actually here. And as you can see, now I'm moving it around, and it doesn't even affect any element at all that's on the page. So that's exactly what I wanted. Now, actually, to be honest, I should have made this a button. And then, so if I click it, it scrolls down. Let's just do this very quickly by bringing in a link block. And then probably because we created the styles already, let's call the link block down arrow and put this image inside the link block down arrow, and make it a little bit bigger so we can click it, something like this. Okay, so now this is actually a button, and with buttons we can connect them to specific sections. So in order to connect it to this section, we're going to give this section actually a name. And the way that we do this is we go to the settings, we give it an ID. So let's call this Model Y, because we want this to scroll into Model Y. And go here into the down arrow, and I can change the button setting either from here or from the settings panel. And I'm just going to choose the Model Y section. So basically, now we have this button. I'm going to click it. It's scrolling to the next button. And this only shows up in the first section, which is exactly what I wanted. So fantastic. Okay, we've got that. Let's move into the scroll snapping. So with the scroll snapping, here's what we're going to do. For the scroll snapping, we do need a little bit of custom code. And I found this code from another actually Webflow YouTuber called Anansi. And the code is inside the assets if you want it. I'm going to copy it. It's very, very, let me just add it here so we can all see it. I'm going to add an embed code, and it's basically very simple code. It's a scroll snapping using CSS, so it's just adding a little bit of styling. Now, this requires that we put all of the sections that we want to snap inside of a wrapper that's called scroll snap wrapper. So I'm going to copy that because it's important that we tag that we have the same name that we addressed in the code. Let me go ahead and create a new div block and call this scroll snap wrapper and put everything inside of it. So let's put this inside. Let's put all the sections that we have created inside. Now the trick of this code is that we have to set up the width to be 100% viewport width and 100% viewport height. And we have to set the overflow to scroll. This is how it works. So now that we've done this and we make sure that the code that we have here is targeting elements, with the right names. So scroll snap is the name and section is actually how we named our sections. So this should work. And let's test this out. Let me see. And you can see it's working. It's even working inside of Webflow's preview. So I'm just scrolling and it's snapping into the next section. Perfecto. Okay, so now that we have this, to make it look really like the Tesla website, you can actually see that in Tesla website, one more thing happened. There's actually an interaction. First of all, take a closer look at this model and at the buttons. When I'm scrolling, they're kind of like fading out and fading in, right? They are transitioning. Also, it looks like they stay in place, like they are static in place. So let's go ahead and create the interaction that makes it look this way. Because right now in our build, we're just scrolling from section to section, but the text, it just stays there. So let's go ahead and add this interaction. Now, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to add a scroll interaction to our sections. And we're going to create just one interaction, and then we're going to apply it to all of our sections. So we have here the interaction, and let's go ahead and add a section while scrolling in view. Okay, and here's what we want basically. We're going to set up a scroll animation, and I see that I already have this created here, so let me delete this because I practiced this earlier. Basically what we want is this. We want that when we will slide into the view, everything that we have actually inside of the container, okay, everything that we have inside of this container is going to fade in, right? So it should have been faded out, and now it's fading in, meaning going from opacity 0 to opacity 100. And when we're scrolling out, it's basically fading out. So from opacity 100 to opacity 0. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to add an interaction while scrolling in view, play scroll animation, and we're going to add a new animation. Let's call this scroll animation. Now, the way scroll animation works, oh, sorry. I made a mess and I've created this twice. So let me delete this because I've now picked the container and added an interaction on the container while I've actually wanted to add the interaction on the section. So here it is. I'm on the section, I've added the while scrolling into view, and now I'm adding in the animation and call it scroll animation. Now the element that I want to animate is actually the container within it. So I'm going to select the container and then I'm going to add an interaction that's called opacity. Now here's the thing. We basically, what I have right now, if I'll put a preview on, is you'll see that we are already at the beginning. I want this to start somewhere around 0, okay? So we don't see it. And then when we'll scroll, when it will get into the position, I'll just randomly put it, let's say it's 30. It's going to get to 100. And then when we start scrolling out again, it's going to stay there, let's say until 70. And then when we leave the page, duplicate that. When we leave the page, it's going to animate from 100 to 0. But I have a problem, which is right now, as you can see, I'm stuck at, I'm supposed to see this, but if I'm doing the live preview, I'm not seeing this because it looks like everything is already in. So to fix this, you can have here in the on-scroll animation boundaries, and we can give this a little bit of an offset. So, and I know the numbers because we've played around with this a little bit, but sometimes with these kind of scroll animations, you have to play around with this until the numbers match. So I'm going to add an offset of 30%, and let's try this again. So now, when I'm inside the scroll animation and I'm doing a preview, now you see that because I've added this 30 30% offset, I'm actually at 70%, not at the 100. And now, as I'm scrolling out, you can see it's starting to fade out. Let's do a done and let's test this out. So now we're seeing this. As I'm scrolling out, it's fading out. I'm trying to do this slow so that you can see it. And then, well, we don't have it in this section, but now it's fading in again. So basically now I have this applied to this section. Let's go ahead and apply this to all sections. So go ahead, while scrolling into view, play scroll animation. Let's add this offset to 30. And basically I have to reapply this manually to all of the sections that we have here.
Hey Ron, let me pop in, and Cyrix, if I'm not mispronouncing his name, he's asking if we can also animate the image as we scroll. I just find it as it's a really interesting idea, and yes, we can. Like the way we fade out the text, we can take any other element and apply a different animation to it, and that way we are also adding more dynamic. So good idea. And
yeah, of course. And actually I am going to add one more thing in a second. I just wanted to finish this so that we can see it, but let's test this out right now. So it's fading and you can see it's faded in. Let's try this the other way around. So you can see it's fading in. The fade in happens actually fairly fast, but it's happening. Now, here's the thing that I want to add. Here, it actually looks like this is staying right in place, right? It looks like it's static. The text is actually static. Here, our text is, scrolling up and down. Now, in general, we could have made something like makes the text fixed or make the text absolute so it literally stays in place. But because we have this snap code and it doesn't work with absolute positioning, we can't do this. So we are going to animate one more thing. So let's go back to our scroll animation, and we're actually going to fake this effect of the text stays in place. So here's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to go back to the scroll animation, and I'm going to choose the container, but this time instead of opacity, I want to animate its position. So I'm going to move it. And what I want to do is I want to make, let's say that when it's in position, when we are arriving at the middle, it should be at position 0, right? But let me duplicate this and do position 0 here as well. But when we're scrolling down, when we're scrolling out, I want this to actually stay maybe at the same place. So let me maybe move this down 76 pixels down. And when we begin, so maybe it's going to be minus 76. Minus 76. Let's see how that's going to look like. So now, as I'm moving, you can see that the text is actually moving down, right? Actually, maybe I need to push it higher so it looks like it's not moving at all, right? I need to be more extreme. Instead of minus 75, maybe 150 and 150 here. Let's try this. Now I'm scrolling. Now you can see that it's almost not moving. It is moving still down, so I should probably be even more extreme in my offsetting of the text. But you can see that I will be able to, let's try minus 200 and 200. I will be able to fake this positioning of the text doesn't move, but it actually just animates in the other direction, so it looks like it's not moving. Right now, I think here it is. Now I got it, right? It looks like the text is staying in place, but actually it's just moving in the other direction. Okay, so I think we're good with the actual content and scroll snapping and interaction. Let's go ahead and create the nav bar, all right? Let me just take a water break. Kabarza, do we have any interesting questions or discussions going on?
Yeah, Something else I want to mention, Friendly M Agency is saying we could apply the animation to the class instead of, reapplying it to each section. And that is correct. We could do it that way. So we can be a bit more efficient.
You are right. Every time that I'm, yeah, every time I do something 4 times, I'm saying, maybe I shouldn't have done that this way. But a good note. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the nav bar. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Webflow's native nav bar. And why I'm using that, because, if we're going to go ahead and make this responsive later on, I don't think we're going to get to this today, but, it's going to be easier. Everything is going to be turned into, hamburger menu and stuff like this. Okay, but with Webflow's native nav bar, we have a lot of cleanup to do. So first of all, let's call this nav bar. Let's remove the ugly gray background. I also want this to be fixed at the top, right? So the navigation here is fixed, always at the top. So let's go ahead and change this from position relative to fixed. I'm going to make sure that it spans all the way across the top. So now we have it here. Now you can see, do we have enough space? Maybe. All right. So now it's fixed at the top. Also, Webflow's container, yeah, let's replace it with our own container. And in this case, I don't even know if let's call this nav container, because we do want this basically to span from edge to edge. So it's not like a real container, but let's take this and let's take all the elements. Okay, so now we have this. Let's give it a little bit of padding from the sides. Let's go ahead and put Tesla's logo in here. It's huge. Let's call this Tesla logo and maybe do 110 pixels. Okay, this looks about right. Now, note that they actually have here 2 menus. So there's a logo, there's a center menu, and this menu. They have the same interaction, but they're different. I probably should, do something like maybe duplicate this twice. Maybe not duplicate this twice. Let's just, for simplicity's sake, let's go ahead and copy paste this. Oh, maybe I can't because it's Webflow's native menu. So let's go ahead and inside of this, let's create 2 separate menus. So I'm going to call this menu 1, and then we're going to have menu 2, menu 2, and inside menu 1 I'm going to add a bunch of links. Let's actually call this nav link so that we can style them properly. Let's delete this. I'm going to have a few links here and a few links here. Now, okay, so now we want this whole thing, this nav menu, to span up this whole thing. So let's call this menu wrapper, and let's make sure that its width is 100%. Actually, let's take this nav container and maybe turn it into a flex box that can organize both of them. And this menu wrapper, we also want to turn it into a flex box this way. So now we pretty much have this ready, but we do need to give menu 1 probably a little bit of spacing. Now I'm just doing this visually right now. This is probably not a smart way to do this. And probably, I should probably definitely do this with percentage if we want this to be responsive. So let's see if this is... But by the way, I think let's see how there works. Yeah, when these are too tight, they immediately move into the menu button. So this menu is not supposed to be super responsive, I guess. Let's do this way for simplicity's sake right now. Okay, let's go ahead and give this styling. All right, so let's change this into a medium one. Let's give them model 3, model. What else do we have? Y, model X. What else do we have? Model 3, model S, model S, and then let's say solar panels. Okay. And here we have shop account menu. Shop account menu. And delete this. Okay. So let's think about how what do we have here? Wait a second. Okay. Okay. Let's think about how we're going to create this thing. Now, usually when we're creating kind of like hover interactions, then we create a hover state for this single element, right? How would we create a hover state for this? Usually we would go here into the hover and then give it some kind of a background. And that's what's going to happen, you know, when we hover on top of this thing. This is how we would usually do this. But in this case, and I'm going to just undo what I just did here. In this case, we can see that the actual element moves. So it's actually a separate element from the links, and it's just following my cursor. So let's see how we can do this. First of all, let's go ahead and create an element that is separate from these elements and just looks like the backdrop. So I'm going to go ahead and add just a random div block, and I'm going to call this maybe menu backdrop. And let's go ahead and give it a background color.
By the way, a few comments from beneath the video. So we have people saying that you can put the logo inside of the container and either use Flex or Grid to make it center, which I presume will work. That would be also
inside of this, inside of the menu wrapper.
Yeah, and then space.
Yeah, but
in between.
I can do that. The only thing is that when I will move here, the logo will get inside of the, it will get inside the menu. That's the reason I left it outside. But yeah, we can do that. Because the reason is when we're going into mobile, Webflow is going to hide everything that's inside the menu wrapper and hide it behind this menu button, right? That's the functionality.
Sometimes we need to have two. That's a way of going around that.
Yeah. Okay, so in the meanwhile, what I did here is I created this backdrop that is just basically a div, an empty div that has a little bit of background and has a little bit of corner radius. Maybe it needs to be, yeah, I think it looks okay. But much like what we had here with this arrow, we need it to be beneath these things and not take up space like it is taking up space right now. So we already saw how we're going to do this by turning it into an absolute, position absolute, and make sure that it's positioned relatively to its parent, which is menu 1. So let me turn this into relative. And now, basically, it's behind all of these elements. I can push it a little bit here. And yeah, it actually looks pretty good. Maybe we can make this a little bit smaller. And now it works. Okay, so now it is just statically behind model 3. Now here's what we need to do. We need to create hover interactions that if I'm hovering over this element, it's just going to move into this position. And if we're hovering over this one, it's going to move into this position. And actually, if we're going to hover over this one, it needs to not only change the position, it also needs to grow a little bit, right? To change to this size. So let's go ahead and do and of course, if we are hovering out, it needs to disappear. So let's start off with the moving and resizing, and then go ahead and do the disappear. So for this thing, we're actually going to have to manually create 4 different interactions. This is not something that we can do applied based on class like we discussed earlier, because each of them has a different position and potentially a different size based on how big, how many words are in the link. So actually, let's start with this one. It's going to be easier actually to go backwards, work backwards. I'm going to pick this link and going to the interaction panel and going to add a mouse hover interaction. And going to do on hover, and let's call this solar hover. Now here's what we need to animate. We need to pick the menu backdrop, and let's go ahead and animate its position. So I'm going to move it and then just basically position it where I need to position it. Now I also need to change its size, so let's go ahead and change size and do maybe, I don't know, 130. No, that's too much, or maybe it's okay. So now I have the size. I'm putting this together so these two things animate together. And now I need to change the move a little bit here. Okay, so this is going to be the final animation and size where it moves into. It's going to happen over half a second, but linear animation is always boring. So let's do outcirc. Let's do outcirc for both of them. Outcirc. Let's preview this for a second. Okay, so now it's moving and changing the size. Okay, that's nice. So basically, that's what we need to do. So we've already done that, right? But it moves. Fantastic. All we need to do is to duplicate it to these buttons with different parameters. So let's see how we're going to do this. Let's choose this one, and let's do element hover. We already have this created, so let's just go ahead and duplicate this. And this one, we're going to call this Model S hover, and move into not this position, move into this position. Now, basically, if it's in the original size, it looks okay, but it might be moving from solar panels. So we do need to shrink it back to its original size. So I don't remember what was the original size. Maybe it was 78 or something. Let me go out to just see what was the original size of this. 89. So 89 pixels. So let's go here and do size 89. Okay, so now if it's bigger, it's going to move back to the same size. If it's anyway in this size, you're not going to see this. Move to the right position, save this. Let's test this out. So now we can move here and we can move here, and you can see the size changes. Big, small, big, small. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the Model X, hover, start animation. Let's duplicate this. It's already super close. So Model X, size is the same. We're just going to have to pick the position, and it is set. Fantastic. Last one, not last one, but almost last one. Start animation, duplicate, Model Y. So sometimes you do have like a little bit of tedious manual work to create these interactions, but as you can see, you can create some pretty cool stuff, and the duplication is actually fairly easy. The last thing that we have to do is actually create this for the first one of them. So mouse hover and start animation, because we might want to scroll back into this one. So this is going to be Model 3. Move back into position 0 and change to this size. And by the way, for this one, here's something that I forgot, and it's too bad that I forgot about this right now, because now I'm going to have to fix it 4 times. We forgot that it's going to start with opacity 0, and then we also need to change the opacity to 100. So here's how we're going to fix this. First of all, let's set the animation, the opacity to 0, and set this as an initial state. This we only need to do once. But for all of the animation, they do need to animate the opacity back to 100. So I'm going to save this. And we also want that when we're hovering out of the whole menu, so no matter where we are, if we're hovering outside of the menu, we want the button to disappear. So let's add a hover out interaction on the whole menu one. So menu one, hover, animation, actually not on hover, only on hover out. And I'm going to call this just menu one hover out, and just pick this backdrop, opacity to back to 0. So let's save this. Let's test this out. So now we're starting with no opacity. Opacity in, opacity out, opacity in, opacity out. But if we're going to start from this position, you see, we're not going to see it because these interactions don't have the opacity in interaction. So let's go ahead and basically just very quickly also add opacity 100 added to them. Save. And then this one, model opacity 100, and then save. I think I've made something wrong. Here I've animated nav link. Nope, I need to change the target and I need to change the backdrop opacity. Okay, this one, going to choose the backdrop, opacity 100, and last but not least, solar panel. Let's choose the menu backdrop, opacity 100. All right, let's save this and let's test this out. Boom, boom, out, out, in, out, in, out, in. Okay. And we have this interaction working. All right. So we have done this, and I think that for less than 1 hour, we have built this page. It's not perfect, right? It's not responsive yet. We haven't created, this mobile menu maybe, or, we can go ahead and recreate this stuff, which is also fairly easy. But I think for a demonstration on how easy it is to create something as world-class as Tesla.com, it's unbelievable that you can do this thing in less than 1 hour. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you want to open up for Q&A and ask some questions, I think this can be a fantastic time to do this. Kabarza, we can open up some questions from our students. Also a good time, as I said again, to remind people that we have just launched the 3rd edition to the Webflow Masterclass today, and we're running a promotion until Friday. You can get it for $200 off, and this is crazy new course. I would love to show you just a second. Let me see if I have this here. In this new course, we are teaching you to build 2 websites. We have basically did this more like a project-based learning. So we are teaching you Webflow by building these very complex websites, like real-world website. We have a real estate website, and we have this fitness websites, including CMS and interactions and a bunch of stuff. And you're learning Webflow in depth while building these real client work projects. So this is really amazing stuff. I really encourage you to check this out. And yeah, let's open up for questions. What's up, Kabarza? I need to find a position where I'm not on your face.
Yeah.
So do we have interesting questions in the chat?
I'm also just reading the chat right now. looking for questions.
Please don't delete this stream. We're not going to delete this stream. Did you enjoy this stream so far? Did you find it valuable? Did you learn some new Webflow magic and thinking techniques today? So, Adil, what's the best practices to use background images in Webflow? Now we have a whole new chapter on this in the course, like advanced image techniques, because these are, Kabarza, go ahead and tackle it.
Somebody else also asked like a very similar question, if we can use like inline images or normal images. There are many ways of, achieving the same look, by still using different tools in Webflow. So we can use inline images like normal image elements and then position them absolute and then just put content on top of them. That's also a good way of using images in Webflow. Then they will be more responsive and faster to load.
Yeah.
Just as you said, we have a full video on that.
If you were building this site for Elon, would you use actually inline images versus background images?
If Elon asks me, I will do inline images for him.
But Elon would have you do it from the office, working 40 hours in the office first.
Probably, yes.
Got it. Okay, let's see. We have a question from Cameron. I have a question. Basically, my clients are small business, and I like to slowly teach them how to manage the website themselves. Is post-project text update for clients easy to complete? So the way that we teach it in the Webflow Masterclass, and also I recommend, is I do recommend you train your clients on working with Webflow's editor, which is super, super easy. So for things really like text updates or even updates stuff on their CMS, which is, adding a new car, adding a new inventory thing, right? Blog posts, they should be able to do this on their own. They don't really need your help as a designer or a developer, unless this requires a change in the structure of the page or the logic of the site. They should be able to do this on their own. And you should be able to train them to do this, and it's fairly easy with Webflow.
Larissa is asking, can I learn animations in depth in your course? You want to tackle this or?
Yeah, so I think in this course, we decided to make things a little less theoretical and a little bit more practical, and really show you how these concepts apply in real world websites. So let me just go ahead again and open up so here's the website. Here's, for example, the fitness website, and it has these, intro animation and this kind of animation, and the other website that we have. Let me show you. I'm just afraid that because I'm streaming, like I won't be able to do animations. Like my computer is slow right now, but we cover these intro animation and these parallax animations, and of course like the normal animation, all of these kind of like interactive animation, these kinds of like moving, both scrolling, moving, and the text is a loading animation. So we're tackling a lot of kinds of different animation, and also how to practically use them in real world context, and also all of the mental models that you will need to be able to then think up any other animation that you might want to apply, and figure out how to do it on your own. What else do we have here?
And just to continue on that, we don't just stop like at the animations that Webflow offers. We like explore a little bit more to add even like more animation. So we go a little bit more in depth.
Do you cover how to handle clients and what to consider when getting your first clients in the masterclass? Well, specifically, the Webflow Masterclass is not about freelancing, it's about Webflow, but we do cover how to have your sales conversations regarding Webflow. So a lot of clients might not want to, maybe they they've heard everybody uses WordPress, or they have other, platforms or hosting considerations. So when you're selling Webflow websites to them, you want to know how to address these concerns and how to talk about what they care about and ease their concerns so that you can sell them Webflow websites. So we do cover these Webflow specific sales topics, but not necessarily just normal, again, freelancing tips or where to find your clients. This is, again, this is a Webflow course, not specifically a freelancing course.
Another question, what style properties, like in general, like what styles can you add to CMS data in Webflow? So basically anything. So you you can add styles to CMS data the way you add style to other elements. So you can create like CMS driven websites that are still looking really unique. You can even have like different rules, like the first item would, for example, look different, or the odd or even items would look different. So a lot of flexibility with CMS and styling.
So I have a question for Amir. How long will it take a beginner who does not specialize in programming to build a page similar to what you did with the Tesla website? So our goal is, and I honestly believe that, if you take the Webflow Masterclass, you should be able to do this in pretty much the same speed that I did it right now, and maybe if not in 1 hour, then maybe in 2 hours. But as you can see, there wasn't like maybe what took us a little bit of time to think when we were thinking about this is maybe just trying to figure out, oh, we need custom code. What custom code do we need? But to be honest, I mean, Kabarza, correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, what we did is just Google Webflow scroll snapping, and there's so many community project and custom code that was already shared, and people already created these kinds of like copy and paste component that you can already use. So you basically need to have the capacity for understanding of how to work with these things, and then you can reapply them. I don't know all of the custom codes or all of the effects, but I know how to look for them and I know how to implement them easily. And that's my goal, is to have you at the same position by the end of that course.
By the way, I asked one of our Webflow coaches, like, what do you think about scroll snapping? I know there are like many solutions. Which one should we use? And kudos to Ethan. He mentioned this one is the simplest one, so we took this one.
All right, so there's one from Jan. Susan, Ron, when you start a new project, do you spend time creating style guide? Is it your typical starting point? Yeah, so we do usually start with a style guide. We have a style guide as one of the the resources in the course, and we basically gave away the style guide for free. And I think this is a really great place to start. You spend a few minutes to an hour setting up the basic. It's really worth doing when you have a complex website. If it's a single landing page with just one site, just one page and not too much content, maybe it's not worth your time, because you can build the whole page in 1 to 3 hours, right? But if you have like a big project, like the project actually that we're covering in the class, that have multiple pages, that have a lot of dynamic content, and you're reusing styles and you're reusing component, it makes sense to get started from a style guide. Now, there's a lot of ones out there, and there's a lot of frameworks right now, client first, and all kinds of really robust things that I think that for most beginners and freelancers are overkill. They're too complicated. So just trying to work with this thing is going to waste more time than it's going to end up saving you. That's why I really try to keep our style guide fairly simple and minimized. Again, oriented for freelancers who work on their own and trying to save up time. But yeah, that's how I would do it.
I also see a few WordPress related questions. Well, this can be, a topic for a live stream itself, but in short, like mentioning just something that here from Cameron saying, I'm assuming custom code and API works better with WordPress. I'd say not necessarily. Like custom code works just fine with Webflow. If you want to add, more functionality, you can just as easily add custom code, and API integration would work anyway. So no problem there. Um, if you need the core functionality of WordPress, then you have to use WordPress. For anything else, if you can code or like add functionality on top, you can do it with Webflow. And then you have the CMS, the fast hosting, the freedom of design, everything there.
I saw there was a question about maybe from Sina about creating a booking website. So a booking website, I think it's important to understand what type of websites is this. There are a lot of types of websites. There are marketing websites like the one that we've built today, or maybe e-commerce websites that are websites where you purchase something. There are membership websites, right, that are kind of like gated content. So you pay a subscription and you get access to pages that you can't get. Booking website is a type of website that is called marketplace, meaning there are two sides in a marketplace. Think about Airbnb or whatever, booking.com. There are two sides. There are people who are listing their services or stuff like that, and there are people who come in and purchase them. So far, I don't think that Webflow is maybe the best solution for marketplaces right now. I don't know. I think there are dedicated solutions for marketplace, which these types of websites, just like e-commerce, these are actually robust. They require a lot of features, right? Like, so Webflow does allow for e-commerce website, but then people start to compare it with Shopify, which is a dedicated e-commerce platform, and it's hard to compete with somebody who's just doing that, right? So with marketplace, I think there are companies who are just focused on building a marketplace website. So probably they're not as good as Webflow in terms of having design flexibility and stuff like that. But in terms of the features that are required for building a marketplace website, maybe they have more features there. Right now, it would take a lot of customization and custom code to build a booking website using Webflow. So I wouldn't say it's ideal. I see another question from the McFriendly agency. How much building and using CMS we can learn from the masterclass? So maybe I will just share my screen again. Let me see if so with this website, we have kind of a real estate website. So we have this listing page, which is all CMS, and we have search for that, and we have, you can filter based on, cities, and then in the homepage, we're filtering based on other things. So we do cover, let's say, filtering and all that. This is a little bit more basic CMS filtering. And in the second website, which is a little bit more advanced, let's see, here we have blog. So here we have CMS, and here we've implemented some cool things like pagination, in-page pagination, and all kinds of in-page tagging. And this is by using the a little bit of custom code and extensions, but yeah, we cover this in the course. We show you how we do that. I hope that makes sense. All right, I see another question. In the Webflow Masterclass, are we going to learn tool to track website metrics such as Google Analytics? No, we don't cover that. Analytics is a huge topic. We do show you where to put the analytics code if you want to embed it in the website, but that's super easy. But how to look at analytics, how to use analytics, even I would I've been doing that for years, and I would call myself a beginner. Like, we have the full-on analytics guy. It's so complicated. Can functions like bookmarking blog articles be integrated in Webflow? What does bookmarking blog articles?
So that I assume it's something like favoriting something in the CMS. Right now, natively, it's not possible, but there are like community projects that will allow you to do this with just you just copy paste a few lines of code, and then you add a button that will do that for you, and then boom, you have it. So not natively, but with community projects, easily.
All right, fantastic. Okay, we're going to wrap it up this stream for today. Thank you everybody for showing up and staying with us all through the end. I hope you found it helpful and beneficial. I always love hanging out with you live. And Kabarza, thank you so much for joining us and providing
Sure,
helpful
it was so fun.
insights. Oh, dang. And my camera just died on the last minute. Let me see if I
It's
can
fine.
flick So,
I'm
all
still
right,
here, guys.
uh, we wrapped it up at the right minute. All right. Thanks,
Yeah.
everybody. See you soon. Bye.
See you. Bye bye.